so excited for what you're about to watch. I was thinking about the topic of establishing a healthy church culture because, especially in light of everything going on with COVID right now, there's going to be elements of our church and all churches that are going to have to change and shift, whether temporary or permanently. And even as we've walked through this last 2.5 years of Annie and I being here at the church, there's elements of our culture that have changed, there's elements of our culture that have stayed the same, and there's elements that have yet to change. And I wanted to have a conversation with somebody who I thought could do a very effective job. And so tonight you're going to be watching this conversation with Pastor Peter Reeves. He has been on staff with Battle Creek First Assembly of God, that's now the Journey Church, and he is currently on staff as the next gen pastor at Mountain Hope Church in Lansing. I think he's very well versed in this conversation. He's a great friend, so I hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, hey, Shores Church family, Pastor Scott here. I am joined with Pastor Peter Reeves from Mount Hope Church. He's their next gen pastor. And before we dive into this conversation, I just want to give Pastor Peter an opportunity to kind of set the stage of why this topic matters to him and how it's related in his ministry.
Yeah, the topic of culture is one that I'm constantly thinking about because I believe the church culture is something that we have to pay more attention to. It's not just something, culture is a buzzword right now, like what's going on in culture, but it's our personality of our church, of our organization. It's the environment, it's the atmosphere. All those words are attached to culture, and it's super important that we define what that is for us so we know who we are and where we're going. I'm really passionate about it.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
Those of you that don't know Pastor Peter, he's served as a youth pastor in a couple different places, in Battle Creek, now in Lansing, has done a great job building culture in both places he's been. And really, he's being sought nationally as a speaker in different places. He's been able to see culture in the local church here in Michigan, similar to ours, in a church where we would be hoping to move towards, but then also around the country. So he's been able to see a lot of different church cultures. So I really think he's going to be able to speak to this topic and be very helpful today.
Absolutely.
So, Pastor Peter, I've got a series of 6 questions that just to kind of go through with us today. Give us your thoughts. If I've got anything off of what you said, I'll chime back, but I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say on this topic today. So the first question I have for you is, why is culture important to the local church?
Yeah, I think culture is important to the local church because culture, again, is the personality of the local church. It's what we're inviting people into. All the things that we talk about that are really important to the church, our mission, our vision, our why, our like what we're actually doing, all that kind of boils down to the culture. And I like to think of it like this. Culture is the environment or the soil that we're planting the seeds of our works, of our ministry into. And so what I mean is I had this picture, thinking about the word culture, that what we do on a Wednesday, what we do on a Sunday, how we invite people in, all of those things are seeds, and we're throwing out seeds as much as we can. And what we kind of do is we just kind of hope that seed lands on good soil. And we hope when people come, they get connected, and we try to create some systems. But culture is the soil. Culture is atmosphere that we invite people into. What I mean is culture is our natural response, right? Some churches have a loud culture, some churches have a quiet culture, some churches have a note-taking culture, some churches don't have a note-taking culture, some churches have an Instagram culture, right? All those things are who we are without really trying. And man, I think it's so powerful and so relevant to the local church because we can change our culture at any moment. We get to decide who we want to be and what we want to enforce. Culture is also the attitudes of a church. So that's really important to me. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy. They like this talk.
So let me ask a question even off of that you made the comment that culture can change and culture can adapt. What would you say is a pivotal step or something that we could do as a church to begin changing the culture into different directions?
I would say to change it into different directions, you have to decide, what are the results we want? What do we want people to feel when they walk in the room? What do we want people to say? Listen, I know a church that, they really care about their culture, so much so that they wanted the smell at all their different locations to smell the same, right? Like they made sure that the scent they pump through, because culture engages your senses, man. And I think focusing on the results, like saying, hey, we want people to leave encouraged. We want to be an encouraging culture. So that means that we have to speak like this. We want our culture to be inviting and not intimidating, which means we need to dress like this. We need to talk like this, right? Like we're helping shape the experience that people are coming into, and we get to design that. That's why culture is so powerful.
Well, that's really great. That's the thing that comes to my mind as you make a lot of those statements is even a place like Disney World, where you walk down Main Street, USA, as soon as you enter the park, and they have the smell of vanilla because they want to take you to a certain spot, and every single area has a certain smell, a certain look, certain appeal. They block out views from one place to the next. They even care so much about not having litter that there's trash cans every, I believe it's 12 feet, because that's what their study showed is the length of time somebody will carry a piece of trash before dropping it on the ground.
Right. That's their culture, man. It's beautiful. And you know what's interesting is like, we tailor the words of like, that was a great experience based on the culture that someone else said for us. You know what I mean? Like even the things that like all like feel spontaneous in a culture. I was just reading about this, like bands, right? Like most bands plan to do an encore. An encore is what they do after, quote unquote, the show is already over, right? And then you leave that experience going, wow, that was unbelievable. Can you believe they did that encore? But the band and everyone else behind the scenes knows that we planned this. We planned for them to ask for an encore. They set it up. That's the experience we're trying to create, because that's the culture they carry from show to show to show. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's great stuff.
yeah.
What is one thing that you feel churches tend to get wrong when they try to establish culture?
They assume that it's going to happen naturally. like I really try to live by the phrase, you have what you allow. And culture is not something that happens unintentionally. It's something you foster. It's something you create. You have to be intentional about it. You're not just going to have a generous culture. You have to foster and create and show people the need and speak to what God is saying about generosity to foster that kind of culture. It doesn't just happen naturally. And I think a lot of people think it does.
So let me play off of that idea, because thankfully we have a church culture here that is very giving towards missions, and it's something that I love about our church. As I look at Mount Hope outside looking in, I see you guys have a level of giving and generosity that is really unparalleled within the Assemblies of God, even nationally. What are some of the things that Mount Hope has done and Pastor Kevin has done to help establish that culture? And I know that even goes further back into Pastor Dave Williams as well, but like kind of creating and establishing that culture.
Yeah, Pastor Kevin has done a phenomenal job, and he is really a celebrator, celebrating the wins of what happened or what we just completed as the community. He does a really good job of expressing those, and those celebrations are so important because nobody wants to feel like they're on a losing team, right? We all want to feel like we're on a winning team, and that happens when we celebrate. Hey, this is what happened. And so a lot of what we do is we highlight what we've done together and what we're continuing to pursue together, and that fires people up. I think even the people that have participated, capturing their stories, getting their heart, and seeing, man, this generosity thing isn't just the people I'm into that are getting this. My life is being transformed. I'm seeing a new picture of faith. I think it's those things. Celebration has to be the number one thing, though, that I see that's really fostered that culture of generosity. People want to be a part of it. People they want to celebrate. Who doesn't like the party, So
Absolutely. And I mean, to go with that, I mean, I know that obviously there's other dynamics to the culture of Mount Hope. I just know that generosity and giving the missions is one of the key main ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even as a church, we've really kind of nailed down what our values are, that we value every person, that experiencing Christ, that we value joyful generosity, that common unity, just all these different things that we've talked about. But it's that matter of it can't just be me as an individual talking about it. It's got to be
Right.
everybody on board,
Right.
everybody saying, because otherwise it's just me as a lead pastor saying these things are important, but they're important to me. Are they important to everybody? So everybody then would have a role in helping build and establish that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just based on one person. Like the church is it's on the sacrifices of the many, and so all of us together, especially leaders, we're the first to contribute. We're the first to jump to give. We're the first to invest. Because the culture we want to create has to be modeled. It's not, again, it's not just going to happen randomly. It's not going to, and no matter where you are or what you do have a culture. But if you turn around and go, well, I don't like this, you have what you allow. You get to create this. And you guys are doing a great job at the Shores Church, man, of creating a culture of generosity. You guys absolutely crushed it this year from the perspective I saw, as far as student ministry and Speed the Light and then missions giving as well. Like, you guys did a great job.
And I should say this for those of you that don't know this, that Pastor Peter took over for me as the Speed the Light director.
Yeah.
And so he got to see kind of the behind the scenes of some of what our church was able to do between Speed the Light and BGMC. And Pastor Peter, you're doing a phenomenal job in that role. I'm so
Thank you.
excited to see where you're taking it to new heights and the new excitement. The next question I've got on our list here is, what would you consider the most important thing the lead pastor must do to establish culture in the church?
Yeah. I think that, man, and this is a shout out to my pastor again, Pastor Kevin. He does such a great job. I think the most important thing a lead pastor can do to help lead the culture of the church is something that you're doing even well, Pastor Scott, is giving vision of the church we want to be, right? Speaking to the church we want to be, acknowledging where we are, but giving us vision for who we could be and what we could become. I think that's so important. Creating a winning culture before you feel like you've arrived. I've been watching this documentary on ESPN called The Last Dance of Michael Jordan and the Bulls. And, you're just watching the culture that's being created in the behind the scenes, the decisions that are being made, the vision, even before they were a championship team, them talking about, hey, we can do this. Why not us? I think the most important thing a lead pastor can do is to create the culture behind the scenes by modeling the behaviors that the lead pastor wants to see, by continuing to speak to vision, where are we going, who are we, and then just defining the values like you've done. It's those things consistently over time that are communicated that help build the kind of culture that we look back and go, wow, this is amazing. Those are the building blocks to, wow, this is unbelievable.
Something that I thought was interesting that came out of The Last Dance, and those of you that haven't watched it yet, there's a edited version and there's a language version. I would recommend the edited version because there's a couple.
Exactly. TV 14 is what it's called.
Yes, TV 14. But there's a quote that Michael Jordan said, and I mean, as a Pistons fan, growing up, there's always this like love-hate with Michael Jordan. That, like, I appreciate his game, and there's elements of him that I'm like, wow, that guy he's a cocky individual. But one of the things that interested me is he made the comment in the last episode, and it went along the lines of not everyone is called to be a leader. Not everybody's going to be a winner. You have to pay the price for those things. But as a leader, I'm not willing to tell somebody to do something unless I'm willing to do it myself. And I probably just totally butchered exactly he said the quote. And there is a little bit of, as he was saying it, like he said it with a lot of attitude. At the same time, he's a 6-time NBA champion. He's got kind of the right to have some of that attitude in it. But it is kind of that idea that if the leader's not willing to do it themselves, then how in the world could they ever expect the church to do it?
Right. People care more about what you do than what you say. They're going to follow your actions. And actually, the thought that's coming to mind right now when I think about, even Michael Jordan taking that break and then coming back and the Bulls are still, winning, is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think a lot of people they're putting a lot of time and effort into the strategy of reaching our community and reaching, the world around us in our state and all that. And it's like, well, the culture is what people are going to be attracted to. The culture is the environment in which people can thrive. And so you can have an unbelievable strategy, but if your culture can't maintain or uphold the strategy and it's not a place that people can flourish, it's not going to work. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, and people can contribute to the culture by modeling what they want to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So good. And this next question kind of jumps off of that a little bit. But what would you consider the most important thing the leaders in the church must do in order to establish the culture? So not necessarily we can look at the lead pastor of so many different churches and say, well, this lead pastor, they're kind of mailing it in at this point. And you can kind of see how that affects. You can look at the lead pastors, even some of the biggest churches in the nation, and say, well, they're this, so their church is that. But that second tier leadership, third tier leadership, what can they do to help support the culture that the lead pastor wants?
I'm really passionate about this, man. I think that all of us, if you're a lead pastor, you're called to a city, and if you're not, then you're called to a person. I really believe that with my whole heart. And so, what the leaders in the church can do to help push forward the right culture is they can present the ideas that the lead pastor gives them like they're their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when I come up with an idea in a meeting and they go, "All right, Peter, present." I am presenting the idea with energy, with enthusiasm, with vision, with passion. Why? Because I'm the one that put that idea together. But then also, behind the scenes, we could talk about the ideas, but once a decision is made, when my pastor says, "Hey, this is what we're doing," right now I got to step out in front of the rest of the church and go, "Hey, this was also my idea," right? And I got to present that idea like I'm the one that came up with it. I've got to be passionate about it, and I've got to model it. I've got to walk it out. And I can't say, behind the scenes, well, I didn't think that this would work, or I'm shocked that this worked. No, I believe with all my heart it's working. We're moving in one direction. We're an army that's together. And I think that's what the leaders can do, is we can all run in one direction. I say this to my team all the time. Man, I'm looking for people that are just happy to be in the room. Like, they're just excited. They're like, listen, like, I don't have to make any decisions. I'm just happy to be in the room. Whatever's being asked of me, I'm here to walk the thing up, because I'm called to Pastor Scott. I'm called to Pastor Kevin. I'm here to do whatever I'm asked to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's something where there's so many moments that I've either thought it or I've reached out to Pastor Brooks at Northville Christian, having left, and said, wow, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have supported quicker, or in the back of my head had some of those thoughts, well, is this going to really work? And now I look back and I'm like, wow, to have some of those thoughts, I never sat in this seat. Now that I sit in this seat and realize that everything stops at my desk, there's those moments where knowing that everybody who's on the team and everybody who's around me is supporting that culture, it's such an encouraging thing. And so I totally agree with what you're saying there. Not just simply because, and by the way, if you're watching, I didn't ask him to say any of that, but that definitely,
yeah, I'm just telling you what works for me, man. It
Yeah.
works to be in alignment with what my pastor's saying, and you'd be shocked at how much advancement can be made when we're all pulling the rope in one direction. Because really quickly, when one person's in disagreement to the decision that's made, dude, that slows growth. That slows the speed at which we can do what we're thinking we could do. And man, it's just so healthy for us to say, okay, when we leave this room, we're all on one page. Let's break. Ready, go. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that, whether we're talking Mount Hope, we're talking the Shores Church, or any church, is when we're able to start holding services again, there's going to be elements of all of our culture that's going to look different initially. And there's going to be elements of our culture that will be permanent in a different change. That there's things that were okay 4 months ago that are not going to be okay anymore. And COVID is going to shift some of those things. And there's going to be some things that we come back and we have to have different practices for a period. But I think along the lines of leaders is saying like, hey, this isn't my favorite thing. I don't necessarily love this, but this is what we need to do. And this is what's being asked. And even for myself, it's that reality of having to establish new permanent culture and new temporary culture, and knowing the team's on board with that to help in this period.
Yeah, I think too, another thing that the leaders can do to help build the culture is enforce the culture. Like if the lead pastor, or the team makes a decision that says, hey, we're going to be a church that, chases people. We don't wait for people to come to us. We go to people. Well, if that is the case, then everybody on the team should be pushing after that and encouraging that. And if someone isn't, which is the key, they're not doing what's being asked of them, someone other than the leader has to check them and say, hey, we love you. We're excited that you're here, but this is what pastor asked us to do, and we're going after it, right? Like that enforcing of the culture, if it's left only to the leader, people, that leaves room for people to talk behind the leader's back, for the leader to be criticized. But if the team rallies to it and says, hey, we made a decision as a team that we're going to be loud and that we're going to take notes. So guess what that means? We got to be loud and we got to take notes. And when people who are on our leadership team aren't doing those things, we have to pull them aside, encourage them, but also correct them. Hey,
Yeah.
this is what we said we were going to do. I think that's how the team can help as well.
Absolutely. Well, the last question I have then is this, is if you could say one thing to our church about culture, what would it be? And I know obviously you've already said a lot about culture.
Yeah.
There's one thing that about culture that you haven't said yet that you would love for us to hear. What would it be?
Yeah, I think it would be, really, really understand what you're trying to build and commit it to memory, commit it to your heart. Do your best to live it out. Make the decision every time you're around, not every time you're around people who attend the church and people who are coming to the church and people who are, don't even know if they're going to be a part of the church yet. Make sure you're living out the values of the house. Make sure that the culture of the house is in you and that you know how to speak to it and that you know how to enforce it. I think I just think that culture is the personality of the church. Take on that personality and walk it out and see what God will do through you. I think it'll be incredible. I think that, with every company, right? Like the church is not necessarily a company, but with every company we see, we know the best ones are the ones where the employees are completely bought in to the vision of that company, to the heart of that company. And so I just implore you to be Shores Church, to be bought in completely to the vision and to the culture that Pastor Scott is laying out. Because if that is the case and you're able to do that, the sky is the limit for what God can do through the Shores Church. The best is yet to come. And in the middle of this crisis, can be something so unbelievable and just life-changing for the people in that community. And I think it starts with everyone being on the same page, being on board. So yeah, that's just my little pep talk about culture for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Peter, for joining us today, speaking on this topic, and appreciate our friendship.
Yeah. Love you guys so much. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Such a big fan of the Shores Church.
Thank you.
And excited for what God's doing there.
Awesome. Well, Shores Church, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to be having Micah McDonald sharing a message. June 3rd and June 10th, he's going to be sharing a message on the Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. So I hope you join us for those two messages. I know, Pastor Peter, you're a big fan of Micah.
Love that guy.
Awesome guy. You're going to want to be there and tune in for it. So thank you again, Pastor Peter. Have a great night at Shores Church. I will talk with you soon. See you on Sunday morning. Shores Church, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you got something out of it. I know I personally did. I'm challenged as the lead pastor to continue to help establish a culture. I hope you're there for the journey, as well as we try and reach every person so that they can experience Christ, so they can be intentionally discipled, they can be joyfully generous, and that they can be a part of the common unity that is the Shores Church. We want to help people live a life anchored to Jesus, and I need to be a part, and you need to be a part. So I hope if you call the Shores Church home, that you are ready and excited to continue establishing a healthy church culture here at the church. I love you, I love being with you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.